Given the fact that it took over 30 years to get a sequel to this off the ground, you can say that the wait for a new Ghostbusters was too long. What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to my channel and another installment in my Ghostbusters review series, where I go through all three of the Ghostbusters movies leading up to my review of Ghostbusters Afterlife. And today we're going to talk about the second movie, Ghostbusters II. Before we begin, let me know in the comments what your thoughts on this movie were, if you already saw it or if you were planning on seeing it, and make sure to hit that thumbs up button if you like these reviews, as it helps me out immensely by getting my content out there. And if you're new here, I hope you consider hitting that subscribe button so you can stay up to date with reviews of new releases, older films, hidden gems, and so much more on a near daily basis. But let's jump right into it and let's talk about Ghostbusters 2. This sees the staff of Ghostbusters revive their business after the discovery of a massive river of ectoplasm and a resurgence of spectral activity. So on paper, this seems like this one should have been an easy home run. It's a sequel to what was at the time the highest grossing comedy. It brought back everyone from the original cast. Dan Aykroyd and Harold Ramis also took care of co-writing it once again. Ivan Reitman came back to direct, and like I said in my review of the original, this was from a cast and crew who were at one point all on top of the comedy world each. Though this wound up not being a home run, with this getting critically reviled, and while it was the 8th highest grossing movie of the year, it still fell short of the original's box office success, and the reception was so poor that it essentially caused the long and winding road to get any more Ghostbusters movies made, despite being a franchise that was universally recognized, especially with a hit TV show being made in between the two movies. But mainly, this is what caused Bill Murray, more than anyone, to not want to do a third movie for the longest time. And when you think about it, you can see why, because this one's gotta be the least talked about Ghostbusters entry. Maybe not everyone considers it the worst one, but even with the 2016 film, that at least sparked a pretty big conversation at the time as far as how many people just didn't like it. This, on the other hand, almost never comes up, even if it's not everyone's least favorite. In fact, I remembered almost nothing about it prior to rewatching it for this review, because I've only seen it one other time, and nothing about it ever stuck out to me prior to my most recent viewing. And having sat down to watch it again, it's easy to see why, as it is pretty forgettable. Now, I don't think it's bad. There's certainly some charm to it, mainly due to the chemistry of the entire cast, and there are some solid, funny bits among them, but it's mainly just a copy and paste of the original, just without as much of the wit and creativity that went into it. And it also has a slight shift in tone, and all that together just makes for a somewhat frustrating experience. But let's start with the positives. Like I said, the cast is essentially what holds this thing together. The chemistry among everyone was one of the best things that worked about the first movie, and it's once again one of the best things about this movie. The friendship between many of these actors in real life translates nicely into their on-screen counterparts, and it makes the team of Peter, Egon, Ray, and Winston just a joy to watch. And even if their material isn't quite as inspired as it was in the first movie, more on that in a minute, you can tell so easily how well they work off one another, and it can put a smile on your face. The return of both Rick Moranis and Eddie Potts were also a welcome sight, and I appreciated how this time around the film tried giving them each a little more to do here. Janine was especially a very small part of the first movie, despite making as much of an impact as she did, so it was more than welcome that she gets considerably more to do here, in particular being paired up with Lewis romantically, which I think was one of the more inspired ideas, with her very blunt personality making for some fun moments against Lewis's dweeby behavior. Plus, they try giving Lewis a more active role here besides the romance stuff, at one point acting as the Ghostbusters lawyer, and then having to suit up with them in the final act. And Rick Moranis does a great job once again. He's another big reason why I couldn't help but smile in several sequences, because Lewis is once again just a giant, unaware chatterbox. He's not meant to be quite as annoying as he was in the first movie, as everyone has warmed up to him by now, but it was just nice to see that they take what was so great about the character and just do more with him this time around, where he gets to play off everyone pretty regularly rather than being a simple victim of possession, and it's mostly successful. So that was one major improvement over the original, I will give it that. And then there's the big addition for this film, which is Peter McNichol as the boss of Dana, once again played by Sigourney Weaver. And this time, he's the one who gets possessed and summons the bigger entities that once again wreak havoc all over New York City. And he's fine. He has some of the more exaggerated delivery with over-the-top gestures and movements, and it added some much-needed refreshing energy to the film, and it made for a fun enough villain. It's not quite as memorable as some of the wilder aspects of the first movie, but he worked well enough. And it's worth noting that most of the reviews for the film at the time consistently praised his performance. So that was cool. And like I said, it's thanks to everyone's performances and chemistry that this even worked at all. Because when it comes to the story, this is pretty lackluster. As I said at the top of this review, this is nothing more than a copy and paste of the original, and it doesn't exude nearly as much of the creativity that we got from that movie. And it makes sense when hearing that, upon this project being greenlit, it was rushed into production with nowhere near as much time to work on it as the first one. In some ways, it felt like something of a cash grab. It spends the first few minutes establishing that all the victories of the first movie have just been undone. The Ghostbusters becoming the heroes of New York, Venkman and Dana becoming a couple, their business thriving, all that undone, with the Ghostbusters broken up, disliked once again, and sued by the city, with Venkman and Dana having broken up. Only for everyone to just do literally what they did in the first movie all over again, just with some names changed and in slightly different settings, but still within New York. Now, Sigourney Weaver doesn't do a bad job here, but unlike the first film, she's given absolutely nothing to do this time around. At least nothing unique or interesting. The most baffling decision they made here is that in the 5 years since the first film, Dana breaks up with Venkman, marries someone else, has a child, and divorces this unknown person who's never once seen or mentioned in this film. It's just an odd decision that something like this isn't even expanded upon. I mean, we do get this subplot where the ghosts come after her baby and her apartment is once again haunted, but to not even mention this other guy or really do anything to properly expand on her character and what she's been up to, it just felt odd. And then Venkman spends much of the film attempting to get back with Dana, which winds up being one of the more frustrating and cringy elements about this. While Bill Murray was okay here, the writing for Venkman is considerably worse this time around. And there was also a lot less of Murray's sharp improv skills to at least try to make up for this. Part of what made Venkman such a memorable character in the first film was the fact that he was aloof, sarcastic, and an all-around lovable jerk, always providing a wisecrack for every situation. Here, they try to have him mature and suddenly feel warmth and take everything seriously, with him being obsessed with winning Dana back. While I get that you're trying to get the character to grow a bit, it just feels like a total 180 for this character. Like, given the way he was so specifically characterized in that first film, this doesn't feel like the next logical step for him. I feel like they really needed to expand upon why he's changed as drastically as he did here. Gone are a lot of the snide remarks, sarcastic quips, or just the general laid-back demeanor. I mean, we'll get those moments every once in a while, and there are some funny moments, but not consistently. There are just as many moments here, if not more, that would normally be met with a wisecrack, and are instead this time around met with Venkman trying to be the adult in the room, in the vein of Egon or Winston, who, by the way, once again gets sidelined for much of the film. And it doesn't really work overall. If there was at least a compelling reason for the change in demeanor, or if he at least had some unique arc to him, I would have maybe been okay with it. But this total 180 wasn't justified. He just becomes generic and uninspired, like the movie itself in a way. I don't even think the biggest issue with this film is that it's necessarily just a copy and paste of the original, but it's also the fact that the change in Venkman kind of reflects the film as a whole. Whereas the first movie was almost always bizarre, out there, weird, and filled with characters who went against societal norms, rarely asking you to take it seriously, here, well, it's weird and out there, but with a bit more of a serious edge to it. Like, it's not completely dark or somber, but gone are the attempts at, like, a laugh a minute. It definitely still tries to be funny, and it does have enough moments that work well, but now you have even longer stretches of dialogue where characters play things completely straight-faced. Not the entire time. Like I said, there are some funny and charming moments, but you just don't have those moments as consistently, causing this film to shift back and forth between funny and serious, and it winds up causing the tonal imbalance that the first film was mostly able to avoid. Ghostbusters 2 is a huge step down from the first movie, and is something of a disappointment. While it does have the benefit of the entire cast and crew returning, and they do provide enough funny moments that don't make this a disaster, it never reaches the same levels of fun as the original. It takes itself much more seriously, it undoes the victories of the first movie just to have our characters repeat the same few things here, and while it can be weird and out there, it lacks the overall charm and creativity that made the first film such a classic. So it makes for a decent effort that you can get through, but I'd say you're better off sticking with the first movie. Ghostbusters 2 gets a 6. out of 10. Not bad, but it's also pretty disposable if I have to be honest. But stay tuned. Up next will be my review of what's easily the most controversial entry in this series, 2016's Ghostbusters. I'm sure that one will be a lot of fun. But in the meantime, let me know, did you see Ghostbusters 2 or are you planning to see it, and what were your thoughts? Did you actually like this one or do you think it's just as bad as everyone says it is? Let me know in the comments below so we can discuss. Also, if you enjoyed this video, please like it and share it, and for more movie reviews and film discussion, please make sure to hit that subscribe button to stay updated. Thanks for watching everyone and keep having fun with film.